I want to welcome everybody to our second fall educational event around opioid and illicit fentanyl awareness. I'm Jane Neumiller-Bustad, and I'm the program manager for Helping Kids Succeed for United Way of Hastings. I am here on behalf of our executive director, Mary Mellick. She, like many of us, right, has a bit of the creeping crud and is home resting. So I'm here on her behalf and also on behalf of our board for the United Way of Hastings, and welcome all of you. These two fall educational sessions are being offered by United Way of Hastings, and we're doing it in collaboration with quite a number of organizations. This is the second event that we've done in the fall. We did one back on November 10th, and then we also did a three-part series back in the spring in April and May, and we're doing these sessions again in large part because of the response that we got in the April and May sessions. People were asking for more information, they wanted to tell their friends, and so we absolutely wanted to do that. So I definitely want to thank the people in that planning group, as well as the people here at Our Savior's Lutheran. They're hosting us this evening, and they hosted us on November 10th, so wonderful that they're doing that for our community. I do also want to thank a smaller group. We have this larger planning group, and they've given us guidance and direction, which is terrific. When the rubber meets the road, we've had a team of people that have just made sure that this has all been put together. So do I see Teresa? Is Teresa anywhere? Teresa's out. All right. Please let Teresa know that that you appreciate what she's done. She's the Community Outreach and Events Coordinator here for Our Saviors and has been a key person collaborating with us, putting this together. You can see over in the corner, Our Savior's Lutheran Church is now a partner with United Way of Hastings in our Food for Kids weekend meal pack program. So they're helping us with the logistics and with packing events, which is fantastic, and Teresa oversees that. Also want to give a recommendation or shout out and a note of appreciation to Sherry. I think Sherry's in the back, Sherry Lohman. Sherry is the parish nurse here at Our Savior's Lutheran and has a background not only in nursing, but also extensive history with mental health services, and is very interested in adolescent brain development. She's got a great table out there. Please feel free to stop by and get information. And then Bridget Noring. Bridget's been a key part of the team as well. We'll hear a little bit more from Bridget in a minute, but I thank her as well as everybody else for participating. What I will do first is introduce our speakers. I'm going to do that all at once, just to kind of keep the flow going once we get started. So I'm going to start with Chief Dave Wilski, who is the chief of our Hastings Police Department. Chief Wilski was sworn in as the 56th Chief of Police on May 2nd, 2022. He began his duties with Hastings Police Department as Deputy Chief in May of 2017, following a 20-year career with the University of Minnesota Police Department. Chief Wilski is continuing our department's strong culture of service and community engagement, partnering with organizations like the United Way and other nonprofits in the community. He is committed to treating community members with respect and dignity and to supporting his team of officers. So it's good to have Chief Wilski with us tonight. Next to him is Captain Brian Hermerding. He is the commander of the Dakota County Drug Task Force and an 18-year member of the Dakota County Sheriff's Department. The Dakota County Drug Task Force is a cooperative effort involving all Dakota County law enforcement agencies, and Captain Hermerding oversees all task force activities. They focus on the sale, distribution, and use of narcotics, as well as investigating gang and violent offender crimes. Prior to commanding the task force, Captain Hermerding served in a variety of roles with the Sheriff's Department, including corrections, patrol, instructor, and investigator. It's good to have him with us tonight. Justin Thomas will also be one of our presenters. Justin is with Allina Health. Good to have him here. He has a master's in addiction counseling, advanced practice, is a graduate of the Hazleton Betty Ford Graduate School of Addiction Studies, and is working at Allina Health hospitals to assess and refer patients to addiction treatment. Allina Health is building a large outpatient chemical dependency unit here local in the community, and Justin will be the lead clinician here at the Nininger Clinic. Good to have Justin with us. We next will have Tiffany Newharth. Tiffany is the executive director of Rise Up Recovery, a recovery community organization serving Hastings, Minnesota, and the surrounding areas. They provide peer recovery support services, recovery housing, naloxone distribution, training, and education. Tiffany is a licensed alcohol and drug counselor and certified peer recovery specialist. with over 20 years' experience in the field of substance use disorder recovery. She speaks to and trains a wide range of audiences, providing education and real-life experiences around recovery. Her goal is to reduce commonly held stigmas and misconceptions around substance use disorders while making recovery accessible to everyone. It's good to have Tiffany with us. And I'm Jane, I'm speaking, so I'm introducing myself, which is slightly odd. I'm the Helping Kids Succeed Program Manager for United Way of Hastings, and I've been in this role for about 8 years. And I really enjoy the variety of different activities that we do, different events. We're a small team, so we get our hands on a lot of different things. Among other things, I oversee our Helping Kids Succeed Community Partners Coalition. This is a group that's grown from 5 people around a conference table about 7 years ago to a group of, we have over 250 on our email list. And we get 25 to 30 people to show up to attend our meetings 4 times a year, many people in the room I have seen at those meetings. That's an opportunity for people to communicate and coordinate and connect around youth and young people related activities. And anybody is welcome to join. So if you'd like to be on that email list to find out when the meetings are, just give me your name and contact information. I also oversee our student leadership team, the YES team. Stands for Youth Empowerment and Support, and I worked with a group of them over the summer. If you look on our table, you'll see that we have several pieces of, a lot of pieces of collateral, but I want to highlight one in particular, 2 in particular actually. This postcard that you'll see, the One Pill Can Kill, this is the one statistic that caught the attention of our teens pretty dramatically this summer. More teens now die of overdoses than car crashes. And so we've been trying to really promote this statistic as a way of raising awareness because still so many parents, grandparents, community members don't really know what we're talking about. So they designed this. There's a picture here of overdose symptoms on the back, so feel free to take those. There's also a bookmark over there in purple and yellow, and they designed that as well. So always happy to have them. And we have we've got another speaker, but I'll hold off and introduce him right before he speaks. So thank you very much. Next thing we're going to do is take a look at a video and talk a little bit about why we're here.
My name is Bridget Noring. On April 4th, 2020, here in Hastings, Minnesota, my husband Tom and I, along with my daughter Haley and son Caden, lost my son Devin Noring to fentanyl poisoning. In the days leading up to Devin's passing, he saw several medical and dental appointments being canceled due to the COVID lockdown, which in turn had he and his friend go on Snapchat and purchase what they believe was a Percocet pain reliever. That pill was a fake and contained enough pure fentanyl to kill 10 adults. The individual that was with Devin the night he passed knew that Devin was in need of medical attention and instead chose to leave without saying anything to our family or contacting 911. Devin had recently graduated from Hastings High School, class of 2019. He had lots of friends. We always had somebody at our house. He was constantly laughing upstairs in his room with his friends. He loved hanging out with his little brother, playing video games. He loved hanging out with his older sister, and as much as he pretended to hate getting hugs from her, he secretly loved it. I know he did. He carpooled to work every day to factory motor parts with his dad, Tom, and he was just overall around good kid. He loved playing football, riding his bike. We had no idea that this would ever happen to our family or could happen to our family. We had no idea what fentanyl was. We had no idea what fentanyl poisoning was. We didn't know the signs of an overdose. We had no idea how easy it was, how readily available it was to access on Snapchat and have it literally delivered right to your front door until after we lost our son. We never thought that this could happen to our family. It could happen to yours just as easily as it did to ours. You could help save a life by joining us in the United Way in helping to raise awareness and reducing the stigma surrounding overdoses and fentanyl poisonings. Please go to the United Way of Hastings website to learn more and find valuable resources.
thanks to Bridget. She is the person who's been raising awareness in our community ever since April 2020. And we are here because of her and her family. So we thank her and them for being willing to work hard to reach as many people as possible. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Dave Wilski from the Hastings Police. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Jane. I appreciate that. I'm going to let you know before I get going that we're going to get back to basics, and here's why. I was up with some friends a couple of weeks ago grouse hunting. No, I didn't get a bird, because I never do. But with that said, we were sitting after we walked the woods for a couple hours, and one of the guys said, "What is this fentanyl I keep hearing about?" And I'm like, "You've got to be kidding me." So we hear these buzzwords all the time, but really I want to get back to the basics so people understand what we're talking about. We see it on the news, we hear people talking about it, we read it in the newspaper, but what really is it? And along with that, I want to talk about some stats that we're seeing in our community, and also talk about some of the new THC laws, just so that we can kind of clear the air in regards to that if you have questions. So what are opioids? Opioids interact with nerve cells in the body and brain to block pain. So some of the legal opioids that you might hear about are oxycodone or oxy, hydrocodone, codeine, morphine, and then we hear about the illegal substances like heroin, synthetic opioids, and fentanyl. And as I'm up here talking, I just have to let everyone know I am not an expert when it comes to this. We have experts in the room, and they will be presenting, so I'm not an expert. You might ask me some questions, and I will say I have no idea, because I want to be truthful. So when we talk about fentanyl, it was developed in 1959. And some of this stuff I just learned preparing for this presentation tonight by a Belgian chemist. And really what it was is to help assist with surgeries and pain management. So fentanyl is 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine is. So it's a synthetic opioid similar to morphine, but 50 to 100 times stronger. It was used in a hospital setting to treat severe pain after surgery, chronic pain, and your body can build a tolerance to fentanyl. And more is needed. So when we say one pill can kill, that's really what we're talking about. At least my interpretation is they're putting fentanyl into these manufactured pills because people are building up a tolerance for it. So if somebody takes a pill with fentanyl, a small amount that has no tolerance, it can kill them. Literally, one pill can kill somebody. There's a couple of pictures here. We hear about the rainbow Mbox 30s. Am I getting that right there, Commander?
Certainly
All right,
sounds
100% so far. We talk about a lethal dose. This is the end of a pencil, and you can see a small amount there. That's a lethal dose of fentanyl, especially for somebody that has never taken it before. And then that other picture, we don't have to worry about that. I already talked about that. So how does it make you feel? Why are people searching for this? It's an intense short-term high. You get feelings of euphoria, pain relief, drowsiness, dizziness, slowed respiration, reduced blood pressure. But are there legitimate reasons for fentanyl? 100% there are. We were just recently talking to our fire chief, and he said that they had a patient, and the two EMTs that were working on the patient said, "Let's put her on an IV bag of fentanyl," and she just freaked out because her mind is, I hear fentanyl, fentanyl's bad, don't do it. There is a need for fentanyl, but it has to be, it's a correct word I'm looking for, manufactured by a legitimate company, and we have to have clinicians that are administering it. So in the medical field, commercial grade, and administered by a professional, there's a need for it. That's why it was originally manufactured in the first place. So what do we do now? Like, how is it obtained? When we talk about how it's obtained, especially with our youth, it's with the social media is one of the big points. And I'm not an expert when it comes to social media. In fact, it drives me crazy to some degree. As others in the room that are similar to my age, because we don't understand it, right? But I will tell you from a law enforcement perspective, when we're trying to investigate, especially in media sites, very difficult for us. It's easy to have multiple sites. It's easy to have multiple users on multiple sites. They can lie. Believe it or not, people lie when they're using social media, so they're very hard to track. These postings are erased within 30 seconds sometimes after they're posted. And then also word of mouth. I mean, kids are talking. They're talking in our schools. They're talking to each other in language we don't understand, and it's English. So that can be frustrating as well, but they know where to acquire these drugs. So how do we fight it? First of all, supply and demand. It's being brought into our community because there is a demand for it. So how do we cut down on that demand? Personally, I think we really need to reinstitute some of the family values. What I mean by that is we need to put the electronics away. We need to get back to having family dinners and conversations, sometimes that are tough with our kids. My 21-year-old son will tell you that I was not always a great parent. We had the tough conversations. I would come home from work and I would share stories that were horrific. I probably scarred him for life. But my fear was, that's my opportunity to get information in his ears, and I'm going to take that opportunity. Whether it was about drug use, whether it was about suicide, family violence, whatever it is. To the point where I call him now after I have a bad day at work because we might have lost somebody in our community, or our officers are dealt with a traumatic event. And first thing he says is, I know, Dad, I don't take pills. I'm like, okay, sounds good, buddy. So we also have to remember that we have Narcan or naloxone. Now Narcan, I will tell you, that's just a product name. Really what we're talking about is naloxone. And when we're talking about how we fight it, this is a huge tool for us in law enforcement and the medical field. So naloxone, it was developed in 1961 by a gentleman by the name of Jack Fishman. He was looking for a solution to constipation. Did anybody know that? I had no idea when I was researching this. It was approved by the FDA to rapidly reverse an opioid overdose. So the product binds to opioid receptors and then it blocks the effects of the opioids. That's how naloxone works. So the Hastings Police Department, we carry this. We have seen an uptick over the years in the use of this product. I'll get to stats here in a minute. One thing that's kind of interesting is this year we're seeing a downtick in the use of Narcan or naloxone. Why is that? Because more people are becoming aware and they have it in their homes. The Hastings Fire Department also delivers naloxone via IV. So they don't have the little nasal spray like you might think of when you hear of naloxone or Narcan. They have an IV to deliver that. So where can it be purchased? It can be found at our local pharmacies here in our community. Sometimes it can be free. You'd have to ask the pharmacist. You can get a doctor's prescription for it. And it may be covered by insurance, but you'd have to do a little research in regards to that. So when we look at, these are just a couple of stats in our community. I will tell you, stats are difficult for me because people take them as concrete evidence and really they're numbers. That doesn't really mean that's an accurate snapshot of what's going on in our community, but they're still important. So this is from 2016 to 2022, and this is just cases where naloxone was delivered, just so I'm clear with that. And you can see administered in 2016, the numbers are 7, 3, 3, 6, and then 22, a jump in 2020. Why do we think that jump happened? Do you guys have any idea? What's that?
Pandemic.
Yeah, probably. People are at home. People are bored. People, who knows? There's all these stressors that are going on with the civil unrest and the pandemic and people trying to homeschool their kids and trying to deal with this new way of life. It probably caused more stressors. And there might be other reasons too. That's just my perception. Year to date, we've had 13. So in 21, we had 26 deliveries of Narcan, and year to date we're at 13, so it's lower. Now, why is that? My interpretation is because people are carrying it in their homes. And what that means is our calls for service have started to go down as well. So we're not being notified anymore. We are having some overdoses in our community that we're not even hearing about. And in some cases, we're delivering Narcan or naloxone and people get up and walk away. So it's really quite amazing. Administered by PD and fire, this year to date we're at 10. By other is 3. That number is very deceiving. I think that number is a lot higher, but that is just a number that we can account for after talking to people on scene. And then transported to the hospital, we have 2 No transport 2, which is very low, but fatalities were at 4 this year. Now, when I say fatalities, those are cases where there was fentanyl in their system. Okay, we got toxicology back by the medical examiner, and there was fentanyl, and in all those cases, there were other drugs as well. THC. Before we start talking about THC, I'm going to keep my opinions out of it except for this. Do I think that this is a gateway drug to other things? Yes. Here is why. For a percentage of the population that are searchers for the next high, I think it can be a gateway drug. And I want to put that out there because we often hear that it's a gateway. I think for a percentage, maybe a small percentage, but a percentage, they're looking for the next high. So I think it's important for us in law enforcement to realize that. So state statute 151.75, sale of cannabinoids. What does THC stand for? It's this word right here. I'm not going to try and pronounce it. And there's a Delta 8 and Delta 9 variety of that as well. So on July 1st of 2022, it became in effect, and the Board of Pharmacy regulates this. So local police enforce rules and regulations. What does that mean? If we get a complaint by the Board of Pharmacy, we will go out and investigate that complaint. That's what that means as far as enforcing rules and regulations. Eventually, because this is so new, eventually we will get to the point where we're going out and making sure that businesses that are selling are following the rules of the statute. It must be 5 milligrams or less per serving, and they cannot have more than 50 milligrams in a package. So a package generally contains 10 gummies, for instance. Each one can't be more than 5 milligrams. Cannot be sold or possessed by a person under 21 years of age, and packaging must not appeal to children. So no cartoons, no fuzzy animals on labels, things like that. If you have seen some of the packaging, it's brightly colored. You can make an argument this is appealing to children, and you might be right. It's really open to interpretation when we're talking about packaging. So what is the City of Hastings doing? City Council asked the Public Safety Advisory Commission to review and provide recommendations. Immediately, the Public Safety Advisory Commission recommended that we just halt for now. What that means is a moratorium saying no one else can sell. Those that are selling, they can't increase their displays. Let's just hold off for a while. And so the City Council enacted a 6-month ordinance in September of 2022 to say, we're putting a moratorium, we're putting a halt on this right now. If you sell, that's fine. You can't increase, and no new businesses can sell. Why did they do that? Because the way the law is written, gas stations can sell. Pretty much almost anybody can sell, and we wanted to make sure that we had a handle on what was going on, and City Council had the opportunity to weigh in so that we could at least control and know who is selling in our community. Currently, we have 5 sale points in our community. The Public Safety Advisory Commission review is going on, and so far has consisted of meeting with one of the distributors, Minigroom. So we met with the owner, and it was very interesting to learn their perspective. We also meet with business owners in Hastings. We've met with city officials regarding zoning and permitting, and then reviewing with the city attorney as well. And the plan really is for the Public Safety Advisory Commission to make recommendations to the Public Safety Committee of the council, and then they will bring it to City Council. Why do I bring this up? Because we hear about these things in our community, THC, we hear it on the news, but we don't know necessarily what our city is doing about it. And I want you to know that we're taking this very serious, that we are looking at the laws, we're looking at the business owners, we're looking at the citizens of Hastings to make sure that we're making correct decisions moving forward. And those decisions, I don't want to speculate, but my guess would be that someone has to have a permit if they want to sell. There'd be a yearly fee, something along those lines, so that we know in our community who is selling THC products. And I want to touch base real quick on Steve's Law. This is also known as the Good Samaritan Law, which you might have heard about. It was passed in 2014. It provides limited protections to people who call 911 and or administer naloxone to suspected or known drug overdose. I can tell you when I worked at the University of Minnesota, this was really big, because what would happen is we'd be driving around at night and we'd see 2 people carrying one of their buddies who was passed out, intoxicated, to the point where we had to call ambulances. So the law has some really great strengths to it that people need to be made aware of. So if a person calls 911, they are protected from prosecution for using or possessing drugs related to that particular overdose. There are limitations to Steve's law that you have to understand. You're not immune for other criminal activities, so if you have warrants out, or if there's gun possession, violence, things of that nature, and you're the one who calls 911, you can still be held accountable. Also, bystanders to the overdose who do not call 911 do not receive immunity. So that's important to know. And then anyone present, even if you're the person who called 911, anyone present may be prosecuted if participated in the buying or selling of drugs involved in the suspected overdose. So if you're the dealer and you deal to your buddy and they overdose and you call 911, doesn't mean you get away with it, okay? So, and I'm not an attorney and I don't represent myself as one, so this is directly from the state statute. Now, that is all I have in regards to my information. I can definitely take questions, but Jane, do you want us to keep going and give Commander Hermerdane the opportunity?
Yeah. Do you have a couple things you'd like to share?
Because I'm going to put him on the spot.
Oh,
Absolutely. And I've got some questions if,
You want to walk or you want to stand?
let me walk.
You want the clicker?
No, it's all in my head here today. My name's Brian. I'm with the Dakota County Drug Task Force. I'm captain, the commander of the task force. We have 14 agents from every city in the counties outside of Grove Heights and Mendota Heights that work for us. And our job basically is to kind of do what the chief was just talking about. Our main focus is narcotics, and we do violent offenders and gangs and firearm-related offenses. This is personal for me. I'm a father, and this fentanyl and overdoses. You know, before we started this, I went back and I started counting up the amount of overdose deaths that I had been to. I've been doing this since 2014, and I stopped counting because I got a little depressed because it's quite a few. And so I realized that we needed to do something, and Bridget kind of started. Really, it was started by Bridget, this whole thing, and like I said, I'm a parent, and I can't imagine losing a son or daughter to an overdose. And so that's why, and I know I'm speaking for the chief too, this is personal for us because we want to make sure that we live in a community where this doesn't happen. And so I'm not going to take a whole lot of time because Tiffany and Justin are going to come up here and they're the experts. But I've said this a lot, but you know, we're not going to be able, as a task force and as a community, to arrest our way out of this problem. It's going to take recovery services. It's going to take healthcare workers. It's going to take everybody that's in this room to spread the word of fentanyl and awareness and stuff like that. So, as far as the Dakota County Drug Task Force, our seizures this year have been through the roof for M-Box 30 pills. We're into the near 130,000 to date, as far as actual pure fentanyl, our seizures this year have been more this year in 2022 than in the last 5 years combined, really. So it's really one of the only things we're seizing. In fact, we did an interdicted vehicle coming back this morning, actually, at 3 a.m. from California, and we interdicted the vehicle down southern Minnesota, and the suspect had 30 pounds of meth in his vehicle, and it was all mixed with fentanyl. So fentanyl is in methamphetamine, fentanyl is in cocaine, fentanyl is in heroin. Fentanyl is pretty much in everything that we're seeing, including the blue M-Box 30 pills that you'll see out at the table if you come visit me. So just two of the things I want to talk about real quick. Chief did a really good job. I want to remind anybody in this audience that we, Dakota County Drug Task Force and law enforcement, will follow up on any tip that we get, drug-related or otherwise. So if you have a tip for us, please either dial 911, talk to your local agency if you don't live in Hastings, and get that tip into law enforcement's hands. The task force will follow up on that. We have 13, 14 guys and gals that love to dig, and we do not shrug off tips. We'll follow up on those, and we'll make sure that we can make a case and do our best to try to bring whoever is selling these pills, put them in jail or prison. So please, let us know. If you want my card, I can hand you my business card when we're out, and you can email me directly with tips, and we'll follow up on them. The other thing I like to talk about is social media. I know it's a big is a big thing. And a lot of these pills that we're seeing sold are sold on social media, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Facebook, a lot of other encrypted profiles that I'm missing. But so I always like to say when I'm up in front of a group, talk to your kids. If you have kids that are using social media, talk to them about what you've seen here today, and that the importance of getting the word out. And that if they come to you and say, you know, hey mommy, Johnny just posted a picture of a pill, don't just kind of shrug it off, but talk to him about it, and then let us know, because we'll follow up on that. It may be something, maybe nothing, but we don't want to keep going to these. And you know, these are affecting everybody, but a majority of these overdoses are kids. And anytime a kid dies, it's a bad day for everybody, and law enforcement is tired of going to them, to be honest with you. So I don't want to take up too much time for Tiffany and Justin, but that's kind of my spiel. Feel free to come and talk to me out at the table here. I can give you my email address, and we can talk to it another time, but that's really all I have. I don't know if we want to ask questions, or
It's a small group, so if there's questions.
if a question, shout them out. My hearing's not great, but no questions? Awesome.
Questions from Mayor Mary.
So, say you come across something of someone, and you know that it's probably fentanyl related. Is there a time frame that Narcan could be administered that would be helpful or wouldn't? I mean,
Yeah, we kind of, I mean, that's probably a good question for Justin too, but for as far as law enforcement goes, we'll administer it whenever, if we think it could possibly help. You know, sometimes we're administering it 4, 5, 6 doses. I mean, it takes a significant amount sometimes to bring these folks back. And then, you know, it has kind of been like a kind of a miracle drug where, you know, they look like they have the agonal breathing and look like they're dead. And then we Narcan them and they'll stand up and, you know, sometimes walk away. So it's incredible. I don't know if that answers your question.
sure, yeah, and could it be at 2 minutes? I mean, that it's administered and they can hop out of it, or is it longer?
It really depends. It really, at what stage they are. So as far as the time, the commander might have a better answer than that. But I will let you know that law enforcement officers can't declare unless it's obvious. And what I mean by that is if there's rigor mortis or something like that, or an obvious deceased person. So we're always going to work, or we're going to do our best. Now, EMTs can declare, so when the ambulance shows up, obviously medical examiners, things like that, but I think that's important for people to understand as well, that our officers are always going to do everything in their power if they think they can save a life.
Question in the back, Mary.
Narcan can be administered multiple doses too, right? Sometimes it takes.
Yeah, it can take multiple doses to work.
Yeah, and along those lines too, we used to order 6 vials a year, and now we order 6 vials every 2 to 3 months, is what we're doing. So like the commander said, in some cases 3, 4, 5, 6 doses. I haven't seen 6. I think we've done 4. That's our record, just to hopefully bring somebody back.
Do all law enforcement officers carry Narcan now, or have it?
We do, yeah. The drug task force agents are each issued their own. In fact, we have Narcan for our canine too. So yeah, everyone is issued one, and I know probably in the city of Hastings that's the case.
Yep, absolutely. So we all carry at least 2, and they expire. And when they expire, we hold on to those for canine and also for the officers, or if they might need them out on the street, because we have fentanyl resistant gloves for our personal protection equipment, but fentanyl resistant. That doesn't mean, and you can't protect inhaling this either. We have to be extremely careful when we're dealing with this, and especially at the drug task force.
There's another question in the back.
What's the proper way to get rid of drugs that let's say you don't want to continue using, but you want to get rid of it, but you don't want to give it to somebody else?
Great question.
What's the legal way to get rid of it?
Was the question on pills?
The question is, how do you get rid of medications, old medications you might have?
Really good question. Yeah, I think, I know the Dakota County Sheriff's Office, Dakota County as a whole, has a medication drop box right in front of our court window there, right in that turnaround in the In the courthouse area, there's a drop box. I believe Hastings does too.
We do not. No, we don't have a drop box just because we're the county seat, and there's one up at the sheriff's office.
Technically, that counts, right?
It's right in the parking lot at the Dakota
Yeah,
County
the big
headquarters.
green,
Right over here.
almost mailbox looking thing where you can just drop them right in there, and the task force, we take those from all over the county and take them up and incinerate them a couple times a year.
And there's also, you might know the name of there's a bag that you can purchase that you can put the prescription or illegal narcotics in, and it will neutralize them, but I don't recall the name of that bag. Does anybody know that? Tara? Tara bag? Okay, perfect.
Or RX Destroyer is another one.
Yeah, so go to the World Wide Web and just type in, how do I get rid of this? And I guarantee that you'll have so many pages that you.
I can answer your question. The way you're gonna get rid of any unused, whatever prescription medication that is administered to you or to a family member that is deceased or no longer needs it, a lot of your local retail pharmacies, Walgreens, CVS, places like that will have a collection box, much like the gentleman said. You could drop them in there, and they are sealed, and then they are destroyed. Twice a year, DEA sponsors and hosts the take back. That means you can bring any drug and drop it off with us. Don't worry about taking labels off. Don't worry about hiding your information. It gets boxed up and completely incinerated. It's never left unattended. It's always with a special agent, and it's handled all by DEA. The law enforcement will send out notification as to when. It's always in April and in October. So that way you can come and you can drop off anything you have. No questions asked. We're not asking where you got it, why you have it, nothing. You drop it off, we seal it up, and we incinerate it for you. Other than that, you can go to your pharmacies and sheriff departments and some police departments. And if there's any questions, you can go to, I believe there's a website, the DEA diversion website, and they'll tell you more or less information about the take back and other things with those questions.
And do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Melissa Lozano. I'm a diversion investigator with the Drug Enforcement Administration.
Thank
I
you.
told you there's experts in the room.
Yes.
One thing we ask though is that you don't just flush them down the toilet or just put it down the sink, because that really can affect our water supply and affects nature as well.
I do have a quick question. I spoke to a teacher at the school the other day who said he is seeing as much drug activity as he has ever seen. He's been there many years. He said some students are consuming the THC gummies in class in front of teachers. Do we have any recommendations on, if you're a teacher or you know this is happening, what should people do? Ooh, I stumped the panel, sorry.
Yeah, well, this is really an education piece, and we have to educate our educators on what to look for. And I haven't heard that they're is there THC, is there gummies in the school? Of course there are. I mean, we're not naive. Some kids have them. So we have to educate our educators what to look for, and if they see something like that, they have to call their school resource officer or call their local police department so we can come in and interdict that.
Yeah, great. Any other questions? Yes, in the back, sir.
So I'm just curious, where are you seeing the majority of this stuff come in from? Obviously, you said you see one that came via California and that stuff,
Yeah.
but I suspect that there's.
Good question. Yeah, I didn't do my slideshow this week because we did it a couple weeks ago, but that's a good question. Yeah, we are seeing 99%. The DEA folks, you jump in if you'd like, but 99% of it is coming from Mexico. Up from there, and fentanyl, specifically fentanyl related, the chemicals are coming from China to Mexico and then up through routes that way.
And they're just letting it in through from China into Mexico, or are they cutting it and doing different?
Yeah, I guess I don't know specifically. I can't speak to the Mexican authorities. I would assume. I mean, it's not real regulated. I know that. It's not like it is in the United States where things are regulated. So I would assume that it's pretty easy to smuggle those chemicals in from China to Mexico.
It's a good question though, because that, if they're being, a percentage of these being manufactured in Mexico and they're getting across the border, and Border Patrol or drug enforcement agents, we're locating a certain amount, which it's been a record year. What are we not getting? So there's so many avenues that they're trying to get across the border because of that demand for it. So this is a great idea. We need more law enforcement officers. the plug for law enforcement officers on the border and in Hastings.
Yeah, we're always looking for good people. If you want a job, come talk to me.
There you go. Well, both gentlemen will be here through the rest of the evening. If you have other questions, please feel free to stop them. They've got Brian's at a table out there. I think we'll turn it over to Justin. We're going to make a bit of a transition here between the substances themselves. Do you want to talk or walk?
I'll do this clicker and walk.
Okay.
That'd be great.
There you go. I'll get you the clicker.
Thank you, Jane, and everyone contributing to this evening. It's a great event. Oh, is it on? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Justin. I'm an addictions counselor at Alina Health, and I'm going to talk about addiction treatment. Why? It's never a good time to go to addiction treatment. I think it's the illicit demand, the demand for illicit substances out there, and the distributors, the people that make even or sell some of these substances may end up in one of our treatment centers, and we could transform these individuals into members of society, helpful contributors to society. And they usually end up on the front lines with us, trying to help transform and change and become better people themselves. So addiction treatment is something that people avoid doing. They don't want to go, and they can put it off for a long time. I just talked to someone this morning who's been putting it off for 10 years, and it's such a scary, emotionally intense decision to make, to choose to make such a big change for yourself for the rest of your life, and to really start trying to change in a way that you really think is impossible, because the pleasure system in the brain, it just hijacks everything that you think is, it just hijacks all of your healthy, I guess, behaviors that you want to do to survive, to socialize, to kind of sleep even. You put off all the healthy things and go into incredible amounts of debt and things like that just to kind of keep using these substances and keep reaching for whatever it is that makes you feel better. So treatment is a scary place for those people, because I'm going to be taking away the bottle or the substance or the thing that they think takes everything away. It gets them through the day, helps them show up to work, whatever it is that they're using it. If you're heavily dependent on these substances, you probably think they're helping you wake up in the morning and show up to work. And they're incredibly toxic and unhealthy for your body and everything else. And so I want to illuminate addiction treatment real quick and just talk about maybe something more interesting that I would like to talk about, and things that you might find more interesting to listen to, and that's sort of different things you might learn in a treatment center, in a group therapy, in addiction treatment, that would help you change your behavior and help build kind of a healthier life for yourself. It's really about building mastery. So what does addiction treatment look like? You get a counselor, you get someone who is ethically obliged to support your best interest and who is curious about you and your problems, that helps you look at your own problems and emotions and blocks and trauma more curiously. I think when someone else is observing you, something happens. So you get that counselor, you get someone who's really in your corner, but also the structure, you sort of help build momentum for like a healthy morning routine. Sometimes you need to be removed from your home environment, which takes away some of your freedoms, and people really don't like their freedom to be removed, but some people really need to be taken away from the freedom of the compulsive going to line up at the liquor store every morning before it opens, and being free to go do that, because we live in a free world where you're free to go use a lot of substances, and a lot of them not, but we're trying to help people make a change behaviorally, so they need about a month to practice feeling what it's like in their body, just eating breakfast without pills and booze or whatever it is. There's a lot of group therapy. There's a lot of different types of group therapy that are really interesting, but mostly in addiction treatment, people are getting to know each other and their stories, and they're talking about what's going on in their life, the bigger picture of their life, and learning how to emotionally support each other, because it might be the first time that they've felt emotionally supported by a group of people that use heavy substances. A lot of these people have been kind of bumping facades in bars and nightclubs and places where there's just a lot of like, this is just not a very personable environment. It's not sincere and authentic, and talking about your feelings is something these people, like, they need to learn how to do this so that they can kind of communicate better. And then there's a lot of recreational therapy. You learn how to kind of relax, and there's different kinds of sports and exercises at some places. There's outdoor hiking in some places, which is really great. Nature, wilderness. There's sometimes a lot of spirituality in addiction treatment. Personal growth and spiritual growth, I think they're kind of the same thing, but they're heavily encouraged. And then really just hope for their full potential. So the counselor usually sees a potential that the person cannot see, and then they encourage that. Yeah, and then routine, schedules, learning how to reach out when you get home and build a sober support system, because people that are in recovery from addiction are somewhat misunderstood, and it's really good for these people to have a network, have people that understand them, to survive in a tribe and kind of like, you know, get through life together in a way that I think only they understand, because only they've had the experience of making such an intensely emotional decision for themselves and a sacrifice of that pleasurable substance for a life, a normal human life. And that's not a sacrifice. You have to like keep making it every day. And you know, you learn about sleep hygiene, you get a personalized treatment plan, so things that your counselor will know that you need to work on. And then you'll learn about addiction, different theories about addiction, biological. So what was in the previous presentation about the overdose, opioids suppress your respiratory system and your sympathetic nervous system. Trauma lives in those systems. So it's been studied that trauma is a stress in the body, and when you are experiencing something or reacting to something, a trauma reaction, your heart will start beating really fast, and you'll experience out of sync sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So your blood pressure and also the system that calms you down and slows your heart down are kind of out of sync. And so that made me think about, I was just reading today about how that's how trauma reactions work. So maybe there's something about how opioids, when you use them, not to overdose, but when you use opioids to get high, it calms those systems down, so that in a way it's a very efficient treatment for trauma. Very unhealthy though, it's a very unsustainable treatment for trauma, but it's sort of, that's the feeling that substances do to people, and that's the trauma theory of addiction, is that we take and use and reach for chemicals, for substances to get us to soothe the trauma in our bodies. And there's other natural ways to do that. And so other ways to kind of cope and navigate the world when you don't have like a social lubricant like alcohol. There's things in dialectical behavior therapy that's used in some treatment centers by Meridian Behavioral Health, and I know it's getting more popular for treating addiction, including things like CBT and other kind of spiritual approaches. So Dear Man is just a simple tool to help communicate with other people. And I think a lot of the reason people get into fights and arguments, which are extremely stressful, is that they just have a really hard time asking other people to do what they want them to do. And so Dear Man gives you a script for that. It's like, if you did this, I would like that. And it's just very simple communication skills that actually, they really do help you communicate. Give starts with gentle, so just sort of be gentle with requests, or gentle with communication about things instead of like, do the dishes. And then radical acceptance. So there's an example of something that a lot of people struggle in kind of the whirlpool of wrestling with a situation that they just don't want to be that way. Like groceries are expensive, or like they haven't fixed this yet, and they just keep living in that moment and like rethinking a very stressful thought. And radical acceptance just helps you to get past that, just like let it go, keep going down the highway of acceptance, and learn how to let relationships keep growing instead of ending them. And so there's a lot of really good DBT skills, including being aware that your thoughts pass, and some thoughts trigger emotions. Some of the emotions are really uncomfortable, and they can be like a wave. They don't last forever, and just being aware that just that uncomfortable emotional reaction that you're having isn't going to last forever, and you don't need to go reach for pills and booze to solve that emotion. Those are some things you might experience in addiction treatment. I've kind of been coming up with some of my own, so I'm pretty creative, and I like to create some of my own things, and I'm going to be presenting something at a conference next year that it's a sober conference, and it's kind of a theory of how, especially with social media these days and adolescents, we have a major problem accepting reality because we're all sort of living in this fantasy and generating a fantasy life for ourselves and projecting it into social media. Here's another kind of a more spiritual approach, but it helps people in addiction recovery. It's also a visual representation of the Serenity Prayer and step 1 of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is I'm powerless over alcohol or any substances. So I can't control having fun. We're going to have fun tonight. Like, I can't make you have fun here tonight, but we can do something enjoyable and then see, we'll play a board game, let's see if it'll be fun. Maybe it won't be fun, we can't make that happen. Things like falling asleep, the more you try to make yourself fall asleep, or think about falling asleep, the harder it is sometimes, and there's some things that you can do to help make some of these things on the left column happen. So, yeah. So the one over there was love. I found that to be a really interesting example, but there's a lot of different examples of how the more you try to control the things on the left column, the more you destroy them. And so this is the kind of wisdom people can gain in addiction treatment. And it really just helps you build mastery over your life and help you hopefully prevent a relapse, prevent wanting to use that substance again, because you've built a life that is a lot more meaningful, a life with a lot more fulfilling wisdom and relationships than the life before. And I know a lot of the people that are dying of fentanyl poisoning aren't necessarily the people that are doing it every day because they don't have a tolerance to it, but this will help people in the whole community. This is kind of a meditation I did to help guide you from the external world to this moment now and ground you in the moment and just kind of the center of your experience here, the chair that you're sitting in. Instead of reaching out to drugs and alcohol from your mind, you can instead reach within for the sort of inner peace that we can always access. These sorts of somatic and spiritual interventions are some of the things that we hope help prevent reaching for those substances. And we talk about it in recovery groups and stuff. So what else do we have? This is kind of a visualization of the projection. So in the middle here is the unknown, and on either side is you and me, and I don't know anything about you, but I'm closing the gap by asking you questions. And social media and things get in the way of this because we project these fantasy versions of ourselves into the gap of knowledge about you. And then the direct experience is really where you should go to experience people and get to know new people. And so, for example, like I think we might use substances to fulfill the fantasy life that we want to live. Because getting drunk and, I don't know, it just sort of helps you pretend to live in this social media fantasy world that you've maybe built for yourself. So these are some little ideas that I had that I just wanted to maybe share, and I think I've gone a little bit over time, so I will pass. Thank you.
I'm gonna go against the crowd and stand at the podium. I'm always so impressed with Justin's PowerPoints. They're so artsy. So my name is Tiffany Newharth. Oh, I need this clicker. Thank you, Jane. Tiffany Newharth, and of all my experience, what I'm most proud of is that I'm a person in long-term recovery. And for me, that means that I have not used drugs or alcohol for going on 6 years now. Thank you. To alter my mood, to escape, to try to connect, to any of those reasons that kind of Justin and others have alluded to, reasons why people use substances. So tonight I want to share with you about recovery. But to understand recovery, we need to understand a little bit more about why people use. There's a lot of different reasons. There's no one size fits all. As we're working with individuals, they may say, because just the availability. It was available. It's the norm in my family. Everybody drinks. I started because there was a sort of rebelliousness that I experienced when I was young. I first started when I was I wasn't even in junior high yet, I think, when I first started, and it was with marijuana and alcohol. And part of it, too, is lack of honest communication about drugs and alcohol. There can be a sort of fantasizing or even glamorizing. Like, I'm a Hallmark fan. Any other Hallmark movie fans in here? Okay, well, I noticed the last 2 years that every single Hallmark movie has drinking in it, right? It's so normalized in our culture, and so that's something that I'm passionate about, us flipping the script on and normalizing not using, normalizing sobriety. There's different stages of substance use. Some people honestly get hooked after the first time. That's more of a rarity. It often starts with experimentation, testing the waters. That translates into continued use or social use. We call them normies, people who can use and not have consequences. That can progress into risky use or problem use, which ultimately can progress into substance dependency. And when we're thinking about substance dependency, especially with youth, it's so crucial to catch it earlier because those changes in the brain can be long-lasting and potentially even permanent. And so we see that where there's early intervention with youth, they're less likely to continue to a dependent state if they receive proper care early on. So what is the difference between just social use and a substance use disorder? So it's considered a chronic condition, a relapsing disorder, which is really important. I think we call it kind of the old school methods would say, well, you're either sober or you're not. And people will get so frustrated because on average, it takes about 12 attempts for people to have sobriety last long term. So it's a normal thing for people to kind of test the waters and struggle. And if you think about this, I was thinking about this too, with other medical conditions, it's common to have to go to the doctor multiple times to get a treatment plan that's effective for other conditions. It's the same thing with substance use disorder. It's common for people to have to go to multiple treatments or try multiple modalities to find something that really fits and sticks for them. It's a complex brain disorder and a mental illness, and it's characterized by compulsive drug seeking. People can get so frustrated because there tends to be dishonesty that goes along with this, behaviors that seem really like, gosh, why don't you just change? And like others have talked about tonight, there's this hijacked brain, this component to, once people get to the point of dependency, there's little choice involved. In order for people to feel normal, they have to use substances. Their baseline for normalcy is different than you and I's baseline, especially when we're talking about opiates. If people don't use, they'll get very sick. They'll go through withdrawals. You'll see personality changes. We can often tell when our loved ones who's in recovery or not in recovery, we can often tell if they're doing well or they're not doing well based on their behaviors. And again, like I mentioned, there's long-lasting changes in the brain. So what is a substance use disorder and what isn't it? I think it's important for us to recognize that it's not a moral issue. There's a lot of really, really good people. I say that substance use disorder is no respecter of persons. It goes through every socioeconomic class. It goes through, you can have lawyers, you can have doctors, you can have homeless individuals, you can have homeless individuals that were a doctor at one point in time. So it does not discriminate. It's not an issue of willpower. Almost every single person that I've ever worked with who wants recovery will say, I just wish I could get this. If I could just will myself into this, but that's not it. It's not an issue of willpower. Again, that brain is hijacked and it needs to be treated accordingly. There's also not one pathway to recovery. So there is no one size fits all. Just like it is experienced uniquely to individuals and families, it needs to be treated as such uniquely. What it is that complex brain disorder. It's considered a mental illness in the DSM. If it's left untreated, it's a chronic and progressive illness, meaning that it's persistent and it will progress. There are stages of addiction that we can see where people are at, and left untreated, it will progress ultimately to the point of potentially being fatal. It is a treatable condition, and it's responsive to treatment and is very individualized. So some different factors to substance use disorders. Different cultures play a background. Different cultures are more highly susceptible. I'm from the northern Minnesota region, and alcoholism, for example, there's significant rates of alcoholism up there. And in fact, rural Minnesota in general, we just got statistics back about people accessing treatment, and in rural Minnesota areas, it has skyrocketed since 2020. Situational, there can be trauma, there can be developmental, it can be a ritualistic sort of thing, cognitive, genetic, and medical. So people can have medical experiences. I got my wisdom teeth out. That was the first time that I was exposed to opiates. And that was the first time that my brain went, ooh, I like this, right? Accidents, injuries, we hear of people who get on pain medications for being prescribed opiate narcotics and they become addicted to them, but not everybody does. Why is that, right? Well, there can be a genetic component. It's one of those things that's there's a lot of research around it, but yet there's still a lot of mystery. And then values can play a role, both in people getting susceptibility to substance use disorders and recovery. So one of our goals in working with individuals in recovery is to help them examine their value system. And are the choices that they're making in alignment with their value system or not? And if not, how can we get them back on track? So another factor in substance use disorder is stigma. And I'm really passionate about this. I call it the S word, okay? And I really just encourage everybody. One of the exercises that we do with people in treatment too is, if you close your eyes and I were to say the word addict or alcoholic, what image pops in your brain? Every single person in here is going to have an image of somebody, and it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all image, right? There may be some people who fit that image, but there's a lot of people who won't also. So it's really important for us to be aware of what are our personal biases and perspectives on what addiction is, and even the terminology. I think we can get really caught up in being focused on the illness or on the behavior and fail to recognize that it's actually a person. And so when we can look at things from a person-centered approach, that person is deserving of recovery and an opportunity, even if it takes multiple times, right? That potentially 12 times of treatment. That's really helpful, and it helps because I can tell you one of the markers that almost everybody experiences who has substance use disorder is shame. That's something that we have to work through, that we have to fight through, is dealing with the shame of the choices that we made. Maybe we chose drugs over family members, over our kids. Maybe we lost kids. Maybe we hurt people in car accidents or that sort of thing. Those are things that we need to navigate, and so having that person-centered approach is really important. This can be a deterrent for people reaching out for help. If they're afraid that they're going to be judged or receive pushback from family members or even professionals, they may be hesitant to reach out for help. So we just want to create a space for people and kind of normalize asking for help and normalizing that this is a condition that's treatable and it's not a moral issue. Some of the harmful effects of stigma are reluctancy to seek help, lack of understanding, fewer opportunities for people to get help, and the limited beliefs that we carry about ourselves as, well, I'm just an addict, I'm not going to amount to anything, and this is my lot in life, those sort of things, that's lies. So let's talk about recovery now. What is recovery? I love these 3 definitions. A return to a normal state. I love this one, the action or process of regaining possession of or control of something that was stolen or lost. And when we look at the hijacked brain, literally it is stolen and taken from us. And then the SAMHSA defines it as a process of change through which individuals improve their health, wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. Oops. So recovery is a process. It is just that, it's a process. And we shared that it can take multiple attempts, 5 to 7 attempts. I'm sorry, I was saying 12 earlier, I was wrong. But 75% of people who seek recovery ultimately achieve long-term recovery. I remember sitting in treatment, and this was old school. I went to my first treatment when I was 18 years old, and I'm 39 now. And I remember them saying, look around the room. And this was in youth. I was a kid, okay, in an adolescent treatment program, and they said, look around the room. Now, you raise your hand, you raise your hand. There was only a few of us they had raised their hand, and they said, you're the ones that make it. The rest of you don't. The rest of you go out of here and fail. And talk about feeling completely defeated before I even walked out of the door, right? And there was that kind of commonly held misconception of not many people make it. Most people fail. And the reality is that given enough opportunity, the majority of people do find recovery. Starting early is key. So even if it takes multiple attempts, like I said, my first treatment was when I was 18 years old. The earlier we can intervene and start teaching skills and providing resources, the better. And multiple pathways, recognizing that, again, a 12-step program may work for some and it may not work for others. Some people may need a medication to help them sustain recovery, and that's okay. So here's some faces of recovery. I just like to kind of humanize this, and some before and afters. Mine are on the bottom. And that's when I was an absolute mess. I was very ill, and these people too, they all gave permission to share. And the reason why we do is to combat that stigma, right? To kind of humanize this. I'll tell you, my family was planning my funeral. I'm a multiple overdose survivor myself. I flatlined and was non-responsive 3 times. Narcan saved my life not once, not twice, more than 3 times. And I also recognize that not everybody gets that chance either, right? I love to see those statistics that the number of needing to provide Narcan has decreased because so many people are carrying it at home and learning how to use it, and that's exactly what we want. We want to equip everybody so that if you come across a situation, you can handle it right then and there. And that does close that window, because there is, Mayor Mary, a window of opportunity when somebody overdoses to when Narcan is going to be effective. And usually that's if the heart stops, you're in trouble, right? And people are usually resuscitated within a minute. If they're not responsive within a minute of receiving a dose, you give another one, you know? So those are faces of recovery. How can you help? How can you make a difference? Again, addressing stigma, not just on a bigger perspective, but in your own life. Paying attention to the language that you use when you're talking about this. They're not an addict or an alcoholic. Some people self-identify that, but they're a person with a substance use disorder. Let's use person-centered language first and foremost, and just be aware of your biases. That's the first step to addressing stigma, is to be aware personally. Look at the recovery as a resource, okay? This is a profound shift in how we treat people from a treatment standpoint. There tends to be this sort of in treatment, like, I'm the expert, and I'm the expert on what you need to do to get sober. And something shifts within someone when you say, well, what do you think you need? You're actually the master of your life, and you know what's best for you, despite the choices you've been making in the past. You know what doesn't work. What do you think would work? When we treat people as a resource, oftentimes that's a big, huge step on the path of wellness. Focusing on strengths and positives. If you have a loved one or a family member who's struggling with substance use disorder, what is going well with them? It's not all bad, even though that's what's most evident and in your face, but what is working well? What are they doing well? Maybe it's even they got up in the morning and they got out of bed. Great, start with that. What is working well? And then we wholeheartedly believe that the opposite of addiction is actually connection. And we've heard that a lot tonight, right? That you've got these devices, these phones that are meant to connect us so much, but actually cause so much disconnect that we see people craving authenticity, vulnerability, transparency, truth, and real, deep, meaningful connection, which can be so hard to find in our culture. Do that. Have those family meals, like you were talking about, Chief. Have those difficult conversations. Our kids, there's no privacy in our home. We can flip your room at any given moment, and that's just a part of living in here because we believe that. We need to keep you safe, you know? And then activate family recovery. You know, when I'm working with family members, I'll hear, sometimes, especially because this illness is a family illness. It's very rarely just a one-person deal. It's a system sort of issue. And so taking a look at activating family recovery, and what that means is if you have somebody that's in your life that you want to be sober and seek recovery, model it. That can be a lot to ask, but think about what you're asking of that person. It was really discouraging for me when I got into recovery, and one of my sisters, she said, well, and this is somebody who has a drinking problem in my family, well, that's great that you're sober and all, but I hope you don't expect that I'm not going to drink around you. I'm like, no, I wouldn't dare to expect that, but geez, it would be nice to make it a little easier, and I had to take responsibility and make choices to protect and to cushion my recovery in that, but yet there's something to be said of, hey, I want to see change in your life. I believe that change can happen, and I'm going to model that for you, because it can be really discouraging, that whole hypocritical sort of thing, right? You want me to change, but you're going to keep doing this? So it's just, let's remove those barriers and model recovery, and then just access resources when your person is ready for change. So some additional support stuff, Rise Up Recovery, we have started working with youth now. We've started doing youth peer support services, which is holy buckets. It's a blessing, and yet it's also really heart-wrenching at the same time. We have some kids that are as early as 12 years old who are using at a rate that is honestly surprising and shocking to me, and I'm somebody who started at that age. And it's also worth noting that not everybody does either. Not everybody is using. That's kind of a misnomer. Well, everybody does it. No, that's not true, but the ones who are, we want to intervene early. And so we've started working with youth to provide youth peer support services and education services. So kind of an early intervention program that's 16 weeks long. So if you're interested in any of those, give us a call. We do Narcan trainings, so we teach how to use intramuscular and nasal Narcan, have all the answers that you guys were kind of questioning about earlier, and we're a naloxone access point, so we provide naloxone free of charge, no question. You can come in, get however many kits you need, and that's that. So we also have a Thrive Family Recovery group that's at our organization every Thursday evening for family members who have loved ones. It teaches you how to activate that family recovery for yourself. So that's all I have. Any questions for me?
For Tiffany or Justin, questions?
I'll give you one. So
Yeah.
you watch the TV show Mom, right? And people go into they relapse and stuff like that, right? And one of the things they almost talk about is just like separate. Hey, if you don't want to get better, I'm out. It feels a little counter to some of the stuff you're sharing. So
Yes.
can you give me your take on that?
Yes. It is our opinion, and research shows that tough love is not effective. And there's a difference between boundaries, and keeping your family and yourself safe. But when there's this complete disengagement of it's conditional love, right? It's like, you behave the way I want you to behave, and then I'll have relationship with you. And research shows that when we continue to engage in relationships, even when people are using, and that it can look different for different people, right? But I'll give you an example, a story that I can share. So there was a mom who would meet with her son every single week at a park. And sometimes they would go to lunch. The person would show up high oftentimes, but she still would show up and I love you, knowing that they're going to show up under the influence. I love you, I want to support you. And it was because of that that this person said when they were ready, I'm ready for help. I want change. I know that you're willing to help me. Let's do this now. Another family that I can tell you who, actually Pam Lanhart, who started Thrive Family Recovery Resources, and that's very much her perspective, is to continue to engage and to learn to love your person well with those boundaries. Her son passed away, and she'll tell you that it's the greatest gift that she gave was to love her person when they were in their illness, because she doesn't have regrets with that now, right? And that's the difference between the looking at it as a moral issue and an illness. And with the caveat of we do have to set boundaries, that feels right for you, because we can't necessarily let our person come in if they're going to be stealing from us, and right? So how do you, and I don't necessarily have the answers to that, but Thrive is a great place to start. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Other questions?
Yes.
When you see people who are so down that they can no longer sustain themselves, just everyday simple things, holding down a job, bringing in income, putting food on the table, paying their rent, etc. At what point do you draw a line as a loved one, that person, where you are an enabler versus drawing a healthy boundary? So for example, if I have a relative who can't sustain themselves anymore, am I doing the right thing by, hey, I'll buy your groceries, or it would be better to let a person like that, quite frankly, fall on their face?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's not something I can answer for you. It's something that you have to kind of wrestle with of so we have people in our lives who use, and definitely don't give them money. Definitely don't, but yeah, I'll go buy you lunch. You're hungry, no, you can't live in my house. There is something to be said about allowing a person to experience the natural consequences of their choices. When we buffer that, it tends to extend people's willingness to kind of sit in that discomfort. We want to, in some ways, not make it painful, but natural consequences are painful enough, So it's that balance of letting them experience the consequences and the pain of their choices. But the big key is not disengaging and having your relationship and connection based on whether they're sober or they're not. That's painful. I can personally tell you my father did that. And he didn't, bless his heart, he did the best that he could with what he knew. And there was a lot of information out there that says, well, tough love, and you just set these hard boundaries. And my dad said, okay, well, when you're sober for a year, then I'll talk to you, but I won't talk to you until that point. That was beyond impossible for me. A year sober, I can't string together 2 days, let alone a year. And I'm not blaming it on my father, but for me, that was a big straw. That was I completely give up. Now I have nothing left to live for. The one person who was standing by me dipped out, so I'm completely on my own. And I ended up attempting to take my life, which is when I flatlined 3 times, right? And my dad will tell you he regrets that completely, that he recognizes that was not the right choice, So I'm really wordy if you ask me a question, sorry.
Questions?
Should give you opportunity too, Justin.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Thank you.
One more?
Better than I would.
One more. Got one over here.
With the huge mental health crisis right now with our youth and all the social media stuff and just kids not even knowing how to have healthy relationships, are there curriculums that are available to do DBT stuff in the schools just as a regular part of their curriculum? I know there's health classes that teach about don't use drugs, don't do this and that. But when it's used as a coping skill because they don't have all of these other things. I know people who've gone through DBT and they're they should teach us in school. They should teach us in school to everybody because it seems like it's so lacking. And as much as people say it's easy to get mental health services now. It's hard to get mental health services.
Yeah.
It's you need someone who is very capable to navigate the system and healthy enough to help somebody to get that help. And so even just the general population of our kids. And I don't know, what is available for that kind of curriculum to just be as part of our schools. Pretty small.
Answer.
Yeah.
I have a bit of an answer to that. For the last several years, we've been able to do our Helping Kids Succeed presentations to the 9th grade health teachers at Hastings High School. And I've gotten to know a couple of them, and they have worked very hard at crafting a curriculum for 9th grade health that is very social, emotional learning. I don't know if focused is quite the right word, I'm not the expert, but they have certainly worked very hard to bring a lot of those pieces together and to not make it just a nuts and bolts, here's a slide of the drugs, don't do drugs. They wanted to be much more holistic and well-rounded. I do also know the 8th grade health teacher, and I know that that's a big emphasis for her as well. So that's kind of a third-party perspective, but any other?
Check. Yeah, I agree. I think that they're just really great skills for stress tolerance, emotional regulation, communication, and just learning how to build and hold on to healthy relationships. And not bring people too close too fast. I think the phones maybe texting makes people get too close too fast, and like learning to slow down, inviting someone in. So yeah, I love this stuff. I'm really passionate about it. That you'd have to sign someone up through your insurance to go to a DBT specific program, and I believe that they have adolescent DBT programs out there, or maybe they're allowed into some adult ones. I'm not sure though. There's a lot of different DBT programs out there. Alina Health is opening, alongside my chemical dependency outpatient program, they're going to open up an adolescent mental health outpatient program at Regina Hospital. I don't love the long new name for it, but Regina Hospital, y'all know what I'm talking about. They've unified with United. So there might be DBT skills in that program, like implemented, but I don't think it's not a specific DBT program.
That's a good question.
I think it's going to be hard to find something in schools, but that's again something that can be done at home. Like you can just look up DBT skills and what they are, and those can be great conversations to have over the dinner table, right? Like let's look at this skill and what this is and practically do it and practice and model it again is a huge thing. But unfortunately, yeah, I don't know of any that would be in schools, but I agree. I think that's a phenomenal idea. Yeah.
Yes.
So if I could bring that next time, or if anybody wants
Sure.
books for kids, I mean, they're really thick, they're workbooks. It's not something you can read, you have to actually use it.
If you have some that you want to recommend, you could feel free to drop me an email,
Okay.
and I'll be happy to list those, put them down on our resource page.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
that'd be great idea. Thank you both. And Tiffany and Justin will be around as well after for questions. I want to do a quick introduction. We had an opportunity. Mike Mader, am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
Yes.
Mike Mader is with Canvas Health. He's going to be working in Hastings High School, and so we thought we'd give him 2 or 3 minutes to introduce himself and talk a little bit about what Canvas is doing. There are quite a few while Mike's coming up. I was in a meeting not long ago, and I believe someone said, and Kel, maybe you can correct me, there are at least 7 different individuals/organizations at the high school that are working, in addition to our school counselors, helping the students at Hastings High. And Mike would be one of those. Come on down.
I'll just use this one. All right, thanks. My name is Mike. Currently got hired about a month and a half ago to work within the middle school and high school as a substance use counselor. So I provide substance use groups, support groups, and concerned persons groups, which are support groups for kids that struggle with family that use. And hopes to also bring, maybe be invited into the classroom at certain times to do presentations, and getting to the point maybe to do a staff training. So again, inside resource, working with a TAP therapist to connect with students, to support them. And what else? Yeah. It is through Canvas Health. I started working at Canvas Health in 2019 and got my LADC license in 2020. So I'm just, pretty grateful to be part of a community and hopefully get some education and some skills, which you guys were just talking about, providing maybe some CBT to the students as well in some of those groups. And I don't know if anybody has any questions for me.
Questions at all? Awesome. Thank you, Mike, for being
Thank
here.
you.
We appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Sure.
Are you going to be working individually with students and group, or maybe just group settings?
Yeah, so I forgot to mention that, it's volunteer. The students volunteer to meet with me, so I give them that opportunity and choice. Some students like to be in a group setting, and some students would rather meet one-on-one. So it's up to them. Yep. Yeah. And I also provide services if assessments are necessary for referrals as well for substance use treatment. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mike, I think, will also be hanging around afterward as well. Their table, they have the really cool clips. I picked up a clip, so. Sorry on the slide, I was trying to blank out the screen, and we kind of jumped ahead. I do want to make a point. Between our last event on November 10th and tonight, I know some of you have been to both, we're really trying to hit all across a spectrum from the nuts and bolts, what is illicit fentanyl, what is one pill can kill, why does it threaten our young people, through recovery, and just seeing that there's a wide range of lenses we can use to look at the issue and a wide range of strategies and solutions. And of course, coming together as a community is a big part of that. So I just want to take a couple of minutes. We definitely want you to get a chance to visit the resource tables. I just want to give you a quick overview of our Helping Kids Succeed initiative. Tiffany talked in one of her slides about connection, and that is absolutely what this initiative has been working on for the last 8 years, I would say. We talk about a web of support, and we use a model from a gentleman named Derek Peterson. Derek is the founder of Icarus, ICARUS, and he used a number of different resources, theories, experts to pull his model together. And some of it is based, if you're familiar with Search Institute in Minneapolis, some of the basics of the model are based on the research. Search has been around for over 40 years and now has tens of thousands of student surveys that their information is based on. And so when we talk about the data, we're typically referring to the data from Search. So in our model, we use a rainbow spectrum. I always use an example, sometimes I have a slide. If you take a white light and you shine it at a prism, what happens? Anyone? Sciencey people? Anyone? It breaks into a spectrum, a rainbow. And this is a great way we kick things off for kids. We can actually demonstrate that sometimes with them. Did you know a rainbow will always show the same colors in the same order? Didn't know that till I started this. It's a mnemonic. It helps kids remember the different pieces and adults as well. We have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, sorry, a little bit of a dark there, and violet, 7 colors to our model because they're easy to remember. Again, this is from a different presentation, so I'll read the slides. But we start with red. Red is the rule of 5. If I never have any other time with a young person, I try to explain the rule of 5. The research from Search shows consistently over time, for many years now, young people who have 5 trusted, caring adults consistently in their web of support, over time do better on every measure of success, do better in school, go on to become more successful adults, take less substances, take less risks, all good things. So really that's one thing for us as adults. We use the term anchors. Parents can be anchors, grandparents, aunts and uncles, teachers, coaches, youth leaders, friends of the family, right? Any of us that are trusted and caring, we want the best for the young person. We are not engaging in that relationship for personal gain or to try and have a negative relationship or an unhealthy relationship with that young person. Any of us can be an anchor. Orange and yellow, I think I've got a little, whoops, go back. I thought I had there we go. Orange and yellow, we call these strings. And search would refer to developmental assets. There's 40 of them. Orange, those are the things we as adults need to provide for young people, like a shelter, healthy shelter, home, food, appropriate clothing, helping them with their schoolwork, having positive expectations. Yellow are intangibles, things, I call them character qualities, honesty, gratitude, curiosity. Those are not things that kids learn on a poster, right? That's great. Put the posters on the walls of the school, it doesn't matter. They learn honesty when they're at the grocery store, and mom, when she gets $5 change back, extra, hands that back. And the little person learns, oh, we give it back when it's not ours. But if mom or dad keeps it and makes a point of keeping it, then the little person learns, we don't have to give things back that aren't ours. That's how our kids learn honesty, right? So we're modeling this all the time. Green is, we use a balloon as an example, and we do our demonstrations. Green is the innate qualities and characteristics that we have. It's important when we help young people identify those strengths. One of the best ways to amplify those strengths is to weave this web of support underneath them. And so it's finding out, do they have interest in music, talent with math, academics? Are they a compassionate, caring young person? Do they have, my daughter when she was 2, I think, would talk about being too tired, that it was time for her to take a nap. Like she's one of the most emotionally intelligent people I know, and we could see it at 2. That was a real strength for her. Blue are scissor cuts, and this is where we introduce substance use when we give these presentations to our most of our middle school students and our 9th graders. Scissor cuts is a perfect way to interface with illegal fentanyl, illicit fentanyl, and the dangers with it. There are things that we do, like too much alone time, too much screen time, things that happen to us like divorce, the death of a grandparent, and so forth. Indigo, down here, caring for the carers. Hey, guess what? Everybody in this room, we need 5. Every one of us needs 5 trusted, caring friends, spouses, family members, poker night, right? Whatever. And we get so caught up in our day-to-day, we're all on our phones. Mine was over there, right? We're so dialed into the technology, we're not taking the time to be with the real humans in our life. So we need a web just like our kids need a web. And then violet is social norms. Those can be very difficult to change. Those of you, I'm a newcomer to Hastings. I've been here 10 years, right? I'm still a new kid. Those of you who have been here, who have deep roots in the community, you know that there's, well, Hastings is this, or Hastings is that, or Hastings is known as. Hastings is the kind of community where, fill in the blank. Those are social norms, and they can be very difficult to change. And that is why we are doing the opioid and fentanyl awareness. We are hoping to change the social norms. But it's a huge project, right? It requires all of us. Yeah, and that's basically what we give to the kids. I have a couple of slides here. I'm not going to go through this. I know, don't you hate that when presenters like skip through stuff? But we talked about the rule of 5. Some questions to ask with your young people. Who are the safe, trusted adults that care about them? You want to know one of the best presentations we've ever done? It was about 5 years ago. Mike, were you on that one? Mike's one of my former team members. When we were at the Hastings Bus Company. I'm not kidding you. That was an amazing night. Those are bus drivers. They know that for some of those kids, the only smile they're going to get all day was when they step on the bus. And the bus driver says, hey, how's it going, Joe? Good morning. That's it. Family life stinks. They don't get along with anybody at school. Little discipline issues going on. The bus driver is the anchor in their web, whether they recognize it or not. Amazing night. Key question, which of these adults expect more out of you than you expect out of yourself. I'm pretty sure every one of us in here can think of an adult in our life, could even be someone that's with us now. My parents have passed, so mine are not. Which one of them thought that you were capable of more than you thought you could do? They had high expectations for you. They said, I know you're capable. I know you're struggling, but you can do it. You can do it. Dig in. That is the kind of thing that we want anchors to be doing. And adults that can parent, teach, coach, guide, minister, support, mentor young people into those high expectations. One of the things I love about this model is it's strengths-based. We don't talk about what kids don't have. If I were counseling a student one-on-one, I would never talk about, man, that's really too bad, Roberta, you only have one anchor in your web. Wow. Hello? No. We're going to go, Roberta, tell me about your grandmother. What's so great about her? Is she a baking grandma? Is she get out and do horseback riding? I don't know, I'm making that up. We start with what we have. We start with the strengths that are already present for the young people. Again, tangible and intangible. Green, we grow the balloon by helping kids understand what they're good at. I'm getting really interested in this whole issue of strengths and wanting to do more with young people and helping them identify at a young age what they're good at. Talked a little bit about scissor cuts, caring for the carers, and the community norms. This was part of a presentation I did for another organization. We talk a little bit about adverse childhood experiences, which I think we had a slide on that a little bit, trauma, all of it weaves together in the web. So it's a really great model for young people to understand. And we did a number of years ago when this first got going. You'll see out on our table there, the Helping Kids Succeed Handbook. Really only about the first 15 pages talk about the model. For every one of the 40 strings, we have about 25 ideas in here on how to grow that string and how to thicken the web. So it's not something you read cover to cover. You kind of dip in and go, ooh, boundaries and consequences, right? Here's 25 ideas on how to think about boundaries and consequences with the young people in your life. So super handy guidebook. They're free. They're on the back table. I have plenty more at the office. So feel free to grab one of these. Okay, so that's just a bit of a highlight with our web of support. I want to leave you with the idea that all of our kids need a healthy web, no matter where they are in their stage in life, no matter what challenges they're going through. Every one of us has probably had tough patches that we've had to wrestle with. And to have a web, to have other people that'll be there with us and walk with us is enormously important. So, questions, comments. We want to make sure that you get the opportunity to visit the resource tables out there. Oh, I do have that post-event. I'll put the link up here if you get a chance and you want to complete that. Even if you didn't do the first one, we'd still love to have you do the post-event. Are there questions or comments before we let you go to the resource tables? This has been a lot of work, both in the planning and in the pulling together tonight, the 10th, the events that we did in April and May. Some folks, I'm looking at Brian here, I'm looking at Tiffany, they've been presenting at many of those sessions, and we're doing it for the community. So thank you so much for attending. If there's ways that we can serve you and support you, I think I speak for everybody when I say we're happy to continue on that journey with all of you. Thank you so much.